Good evening and welcome to the Cheese Room podcast. I'm your host, The Caller, live from the Man Cave. I'm very excited. Got some beer with me tonight and I'm getting drunk at work party tomorrow night. So the world is good. And what could be better than that? Well, I'll answer you. Being joined by these three lovely folk. We've brought together the finest cheeseheads from around the world to discuss all the transfers and rumours and Tottenham news that you could wish for over the next sort of hour and a half, almost the same time as a football match, but far more interesting. Joining me all the way from up north, Becky, how are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you. I've had a busy weekend. I've been in Blackpool all weekend because my boys were in a Calling You Out National Dance Championship. So we only got back last night. So I didn't watch the England game. I haven't been on Twitter much, so I'm not much help today, but I'm here.
Messy weekend in Blackpool.
Not really, just sitting watching them dance. And we had 2 pints, I think, in total the whole weekend. But
I've been to Blackpool before. I think when I was a poor student, it was one of the first places I went on holiday with my girlfriend. What are you shaking your head at, HG?
I can't wait to hear the story. Go on.
Stayed in like the worst hotel I've ever been in my entire life. Like all the doors were like really thin and rattled. It was just a genuinely horrible experience. And I thought I was the Don because I paid for it to have a helicopter ride up and down Blackpool, around the tower and back, which I thought was very impressive. But there wasn't really much to see when I was up there. So, yeah, those are my overriding memories of Blackpool. So there you go. HG, ever been to Blackpool?
I have, actually. I went.
Could you top that?
No, well, kind of. I mean, the only time I went was I went to see the Grand National. And it was the Grand National where they had the bomb threat. And so, like, I managed to back a winner. And so with my winnings as an 18-year-old, I was like, well, what else can we do but go to Blackpool and spend it? Yeah. So that's what we did. But, like, I feel like when I was in Blackpool, I didn't see the tower, which seems almost impossible to do. But somehow I think we managed it. But anyway, so I don't know Blackpool at all. But I'd like to see it from the air. That seems like a fun thing. I mean, I don't want to be your girlfriend, but,
I've dated worse, to be honest. Although, no one quite as argumentative, to be fair.
A bit more facial hair than me is what you're trying to say, yeah?
Some Wookiees. Matt, welcome back to the show. Have you ever been to Blackpool? That is now the topic of the day.
No, I have not. I don't even know what tower it is you're talking about. Well, I assume it's something that matters.
Like the Eiffel Tower.
It's a copy of the Eiffel Tower that's in Blackpool, but it's about half the size.
Okay,
and it has a building. And it has a building underneath it. The thing about the Eiffel Tower, isn't it? Is it's like in a nice park. There's a building underneath the Blackpool Tower.
So you're telling me the Blackpool Tower is better than the Eiffel Tower? Is that what I'm learning on the Cheese Room podcast today?
Yeah, I'll be honest, you're not missing a lot. But,
good to know.
There you go. Let us know your favourite memories of Blackpool if you've ever been in the chat, and we'll read the best ones out. Welcome to all our channel members. We see you, Kerry. How are you doing tonight? Silent Dove, welcome. George also in the chat. If you want to get the coldest place on earth, if you want to get your comment read out, the best way to do it and support the show is to join the Cheese Room, and full details of that are on our YouTube page. Let's get to some transfer rumours and a possible new member of staff. So, firstly, I'd like to just give you a fact. The transfer window has been open 3 whole days, and we have signed Perisic, Fraser Forster, and Jed Spence looks like he's almost there. Matt, I'll come to you on that in a minute, but he's definitely a Spurs player. 2 minutes into his international game tonight, scores an own goal. Matt, what are you saying?
This boy's Spurs through and through, and that just proves it. No, look, it's a decent signing. Well, it's going to be about £20 million. Obviously, it's not over the line yet, but it looks like it will be. And my concern is when you're playing a system that's so heavily reliant on wing backs and so heavily reliant on consistency, both defensively and offensively out there. I don't know how much we can really trust and put our faith in a youngster who's stepping up from the Championship and going into a Champions League team. My kind of hope all along was that if we were going to get Jed Spence in, that we get rid of Doherty and Royale and then get in another right back, preferably a first choice right back to play out there. But it looks as though Doherty could be staying, and Jed Spence will be our first choice right back. And look, I've looked a bit into him. He has a lot to be excited about, but he also has quite a bit to be concerned about. Defensively, kind of as you'd expect with a player of his age, a bit naive. That defensive awareness, positioning may not be at the level that you quite want it to be. But if he is the player that Conte has wanted as his number one, fantastic. But we obviously don't know if that is the case. But it seems to be a decent signing, but I'm still a little bit tentative about how well it's really going to work out.
I mean, he's got to get past the Irish Cafu, Becky. Do you see Matt Doherty being number one choice, Spence coming in as the understudy?
Well, we talked about this, haven't we? Doherty made, he's one of those players that made so much of an improvement under Conte until he sadly got injured. And, that kind of run of games that he could have could really make a difference. I'm with Matt there. I'm not sure Spence's Premiership proven, really. And we've talked quite a bit in the past about buying players from abroad, and we've been lucky with Benton Kulusevski and Romero, and they've settled in quite quickly. And Spence has been in the Championship this season, and how is that going to go? But I do like the fact that we are kind of building a squad depth, which is what we've been crying out for such a long time. So whether it is Doherty for some games and then Spence, or different choices for different matches, different competitions, that sort of thing. So quite looking forward to it, really. I'm quietly confident about it.
56 people watching already. Please do smash the like button when you come in the room. It really helps us out. HG, Spence. I mean, to me, let me put where I'm at. Emerson Royal's probably not going to be around. I think he'll go out on loan because he's not a wing back. But Doherty for me is got to be ahead of Spence. Becky touched on it. Spence isn't Premier League proven. He's got to break his way into that team. Do you really think we're going to start the new season pushing Conte's push for the Premier League title with Spence and Doherty as our two right back options, with Tanganga the understudy?
Oh my gosh! Look, honestly, it would make more sense to sign Spence and then send him on loan to Forest for the season. As much as £20 million is a lot of money to waste, or to buy in advance, let's say. Doherty is the number one for me. And I'd rather have Emerson as the backup than I would have Spence. As much as Spence might be the next best thing, we don't need to take that risk right now. I genuinely would rather have Emerson stay and be that guy, because we know that he got better towards the end of the season, and against the bigger teams, he's probably a better option than Doherty anyway. But yeah, it's pretty underwhelming for me. 10 million, 15 million, but 20 seems a bit too much. But he needs game time. And I mean, we saw with Conte at Inter, he bought the Austrian guy Lazaro for the first season, and within 6 months was like, no, ship him out on loan because he wasn't good enough. It does tend to be like, well, we think we can get him, so we're going to do it. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, then we'll send him somewhere else. But I just, like Matt said, I think there are better options available that might cost us maybe 5-10 million more than 20 million. But they'd be just in a better position to help us with where we are right now. And Jed Spence, it's a lot of pressure on him if he comes in and becomes part of our first team squad. So I'm like Matt, I'm pretty nervous about it, and I agree with pretty much what everyone said in various ways. We should want better than that. As much as he could turn out to be the next Cafu, but I haven't seen it so far. So it's very much a punt.
Yeah. The Irish Cafu, of course, in pole position to retain his place as we stand. I mean, look, Doherty finished the end of last season in the injury room, but before that, he was playing some brilliant football, and I thought, particularly against Leicester, he was fundamental to that comeback. It was just a real shame he got taken out by Matty Cash, wasn't it, for Villa, and because he was really getting up ahead of steam, but we're not going to be challenging for the Premier League title with Spence and Doherty as the two right backs, and let alone with Emerson Royal. Don't get me started there, because the kid can't attack. However, overloaded on the other side by the looks of it, but we'll get to that shortly. Let's talk Richarlison, because he has been all over the news Let's go to the guru that is Matt Hayes first. What are you hearing about this transfer, Matt? Richarlison is a very divisive figure for Spurs fans, maybe?
Yeah, I think at the best of times, Richarlison is a divisive figure. But then when you're being quoted £60 million to bring him in as what will be at best a rotation option, and I don't want to say backup because I think whatever forward we bring in will play more of a role than a backup because of how much we're going to have to rotate with all the different games and with the World Cup and stuff. Initially, the reports that were on Saturday with the advanced talks that seems to have been premature, £51 million. I was kind of on the fence, but I could kind of talk myself into it, but you're talking now potentially up to £65 million. It's a lot of money for a player who, although it wasn't really his fault, ultimately played in a relegation battle last season. He's never been anywhere near the top half of the Premier League in terms of like fighting for Champions League. I don't think he's ever played in the Champions League. I'd be surprised if he has. He's a good player, but kind of like Spence, I just think there are better options out there. And I know it's more difficult to go out and get a player from abroad, like whether it's a Lautaro Martinez or I think someone mentioned recently Alexander Isak from Real Sociedad. I know there's more of a risk there when you're bringing players into the Premier League for the first time. But I think if you're going to spend that kind of money, I'd rather spend it on raw talent that could adapt to the Premier League rather than a player who is familiar with the Premier League, but I don't think has the talent that we need to be a legitimate rotation option with that front line that we have. Now, what Matt Law said today about maybe Harry Winks and Lucas Moura being put into a swap deal swap deal plus money, in theory, that's incredible. Could save us a lot of money, but realistically, what's the likelihood that Harry Winks will be happy to make that move to Everton? Lucas Moura will be happy to make that move to Everton, and then both clubs value all three of those players the same in order to make an actual deal for that to happen. For me, that's very, very unlikely. The only thing I can really take from that is if Tottenham are already looking at ways to include players like that in a deal. First of all, they don't want to pay that money, but secondly, they really want the player, and that's probably the worst position we could be in. So for me, I wouldn't want it to happen with the way it's shaping up, and I don't think it's going to happen with the money that's been spoken about.
I mean, he was dropping hints, sold Richarlison on social media, HG. San Antonio Spurs shirt, wasn't it? Was it San Antonio Spurs?
Yeah.
And then my basketball. I should have said I know my American football, then that would be quite funny. This from Born to Lose would all be for the Richarlison deal if Winks goes the other way. Well, it's absolutely got my vote if Winky is going the other way. But I think, as Matt said, HG, that's almost too good to be true, isn't it? Putting two players into a swap deal, I mean, that requires a hell of a lot of negotiation. It's all ifs, buts, and maybes, really, isn't it?
It sounds to me that Everton are trying to recreate our Champions League final team. They've already got Dele. They could get Lucas and Winks as well. Eriksen is available. No, look, I can't believe anyone would be that silly to pay that money for Richarlison. I mean, everyone's saying it's 10 goals a season. I mean, that's true. You can't argue with the fact that he's done that. But Chris Wood gets 10 goals a season. It's not. Danny
so what you're saying is we should pay 60 million for Chris Wood, just to confirm. That's your suggestion here.
I'm suggesting that scoring 10 seasons in the Premier League doesn't necessarily make you worth 60 million quid. I understand that he's young. I mean, he's just turned 25. There's still there's a bit of time to improve, and I suppose Spurs fans, we want to see better options off the bench because Lucas clearly hasn't cut it, and Bergwijn didn't really get much chance last season. But before that, looked good at patches, but is still very inconsistent. 60 million is so much money, and when you think about what you can get, but he's not homegrown, so that you're basically paying that extra for someone who is Premier League proven. I'd be willing to take two punts on people from outside the country and think that they might be better. You look at who Newcastle are being linked at, people like Moussa Diaby, they'll be paying similar money. And for someone who has done it in Champions League, has done it in the Bundesliga, has done it at a higher level than Richarlison, I would rather go there. But what can you say? People talk about the intangibles that Richarlison has, about he always gives 100%.
I laughed at that because I thought works hard. Oh yeah, that's really going to win HG over.
Yeah, like if you're known for, I'm going to say it. I know it's going to ban us from when it comes to adverts and stuff, but like if you're known for your shithousery, it's because you're not very good, and you have and really because like if the goals are enough, people would talk about the goals, but they don't. They talk about extra stuff. Go on, Becky.
Last week at half term, I watched the Brazil-South Korea game. And he was up front with Neymar, and because they had similar hairstyles as well, I genuinely couldn't tell which one was which because they were constantly on the floor. And even Jack was sort of saying, "Well, he spends a lot of time on the floor, doesn't he?" And I said, "Yeah, no, that's Richarlison." And I just think a lot of people are sort of alluding to it in the chat. I just don't think he's proven, and it's far too expensive. I know Everton are in dire straits with their money and everything, but it's not our job to be sorting that out for them. Even if we are going to have players that go with them and in swap deals and whatever, I just don't think he is the right player for us. And Jesus, he doesn't play every game, and he may prefer to come to Spurs. Richarlison starts, so is he going to want to come and be a rotational player for that amount of money that we're going to pay for someone to be a rotational player? I just think it's all very strange.
Like, I mean, I don't blame Everton for wanting that money. I mean, he's their main goal scorer. He's their talisman. Like, I mean, Everton will obviously, if they're going to sell him, they'll want top dollar, and that's if they want to. They clearly probably don't. I mean, because I don't trust Lampard to get it right. If they take Richarlison out that team, that is a relegation team. I don't know where the goals would come from. Calvert-Lewin, if he's fit, will score a few, but outside of that, you have to worry. So. It just quite there you go. It just strikes me as being something that the papers have drummed up because they think Spurs will need someone better, and Richarlison might be available because he's got 2 years left on his deal, and people have run with it. Spurs may well be looking, but Spurs are looking at 150 players this summer, so it doesn't mean anything. So I
don't think he'll play enough. I just don't think he'll play enough matches, and then I don't see what the point.
Can he play right wing back? I mean, the thing is, here's one for you, Becky. So this is being touted about a lot. The other man who looks like he's on the move, experienced Brazilian striker, Gabriel Jesus, 50 million. I mean, my take on all of this is neither I would particularly want at the club, but if I was going to spend 50 million on a player, Jesus would probably be the one I'd buy out of the two. But let me just float this to you. If Harry Winks is valued at 20 million, goes the other way, and you sign Richarlison for 30 million, does that make it more palatable?
No, but you're still signing him for 50 million. I mean, it doesn't change the value of what Richarlison costs.
But the value of Winks is debatable, isn't it? Depends.
Absolutely.
You don't know how much he's worth.
Okay, so Everton think we're paying 60 million, and we think we're paying 45 because our value of Winks is different. It just. Like, if someone is willing to pay 20 million, for
technically, Winks cost us nothing. From a book value perspective,
is that where we're going now? Book value perspective.
I'm playing devil's advocate. To be fair,
it still costs you. The value of it to someone else is going to be added on. So I just, I can understand Winks might want to go to Everton. I could see Lampard wanting him, but it still counts as 50, 60 million for me. I don't care how you throw it in. If we give them a bag of footballs and all the rest of it, the value is what it is. So yeah,
that's a good point there. Cameron's just put there about the wage bill. It'll be interesting how much Richarlison is on at Everton, because I would have thought he's probably. You think he'd be one of the higher paid players at Everton, wouldn't he? So that kind of comes into it, doesn't it, as well? We're not known for paying people a lot per week.
It's funny when you talk about the difference between if you pick Gabriel Jesus or you go with Richarlison, there is this idea that I don't think Gabriel Jesus fits how we play at all, right? If we want to do that 3-4-3 where the wide players kind of hold the ball up and you get a bit of movement, I don't think Gabriel Jesus can do that. However, if you want someone off the bench and you go a bit more 4-4-2 and all the things that we have done in the past, or you want a partner for Kane that isn't Son, then maybe he'll come in and do that. But it becomes such a kind of niche role that if you are thinking of, I want to stick with the 3-4-3, then to me, Richarlison is a better fit for what we do, but I don't want him for that money. I think there are just better options available, whether it's within the UK. I think we could go to Aston Villa with 50 million and get Ollie Watkins, and it would give you pretty much a similar thing. It's too much money. And I know that people will say, well, it's not your money. What do you care? But we do have a finite amount, and we want to get a lot of players this summer. We can't just hope that we're going to get free transfers and then splash it all on Richarlison. Like, I want to see us really plan. And I don't know. It's too much for me.
A lot of people have put that. They're like, oh, they don't care what the fee is because it's not their money. But I don't agree with that, because it still comes from the club. It's it's like things go round. If we spend more on this, then obviously there's less on other bits and things. But it then still comes from the club. There's still money to be found. So I don't think obviously Liverpool have signed this Nunez person for 100 million. Apparently, I was talking to my Dave about it today, and he's like, oh, it's a lot of money. I went, it's a ridiculous amount of money. But it just becomes a number, and it's almost like, oh, it doesn't really matter. But it does. The clubs can't go on like that, and that's why Everton have got themselves in this position. So, and I think someone alluded to it before, because the 150 million was declared that we were going to, use it. It's just unfortunately made everybody more expensive. And I did think at the time that it seemed like strange timing, because at that point we hadn't signed anybody for a fee either, and it was like, well, what's going on with this 150 million? And hasn't it kind of changed? The bargaining has kind of gone a bit because we've apparently got all this money. So I think that hasn't helped. It's just inflated everybody's price.
And inflated everyone's expectations, to be fair.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Because, Spurs fans are now expecting that we're going to sign, Mbappe or something. I think you've got to keep it kind of real. We're still going to be looking at the getting value for money. Not necessarily the cheaper end of the market, but value for money. And what we can't have happen is a Tongi Ndombele happening again, where we spend 65 million quid on a player who's poor, which is where I get to with Richarlison. I mean, he's not Tongi Ndombele standard, but he's certainly not value for money for me. There's some good names being raised in the chat, HG.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like the value for money thing is important, because we know with Ndombele that will cost us a huge amount of money. You don't want to get those big purchases wrong. You don't want to get any purchases wrong, but especially the big ones. So yeah, like the names that have been mentioned. I saw, Isaac. He's at Real Sociedad right now. He's very much a number 9, very much the front man who likes to get others involved. I don't want to say he's like Kane, because he plays very differently, but there's a similarity to what they do. I don't know what his release clause is, but if it is 60 million, then I would go there. Absolutely go. Plus, he plays with Kulusevski for Sweden, so you'd get that balance too, where there's little reason to go for Richarlison. I think if all you're going for is the guys played in the Premier League for a few seasons and scored a few goals, great. But I'd rather have Danny Ings than Richarlison, and you could get him for Villa may well want their money back.
He's permanently on the injury table, isn't he?
No, he's played a lot for Villa, but I mean, I saw him linked with Man United today, which seemed a bit weird. But if Villa were trying to shift him, then it just that there are better ways to spend that money. That really is where I am. Like, Richarlison is a decent player, but he's not worth that money to Spurs, and I think we could do better.
I mean, yeah, there's a point. I mean, Phil wasn't on the Dybala train due to his wages. However, in comparison to Richarlison, it'd be a better option and cheaper, even with big wages. So to me, this just doesn't add up. But there's definitely some smoke there, isn't there, Matt?
Sorry, I lost connection there for a second.
There's definitely something to this Richarlison rumour, though, isn't there? There does seem to be a bit of smoke around it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's definitely interest there, and it makes sense, because I think for a good few weeks now we've been hearing about Conte wanting a pacey forward. I think, as Matt Law put it, he wants someone who can play centrally and out wide. So it's that, and I think for me again that just further kind of eats into the point that we want someone who can rotate with Kulusevski one week, then maybe rotate for Son the next week, then in a cup game rotate for Kane, who has that versatility and playing in different positions. And look, I mean, to be honest, as much as we can debate the talent or the ability and the price of Richarlison, he does fit into a lot of kind of demographics that Conte would look for in a player. And even Parrott, where he's 25, 26, he's coming into the prime of his career. It's probably the highest value he's ever going to have. He has the Premier League experience and stuff. So it's definitely one that makes sense in that regard. But in terms of, again, the actual ability of the player, that is a bit of a question. I just want to say as well what I said to you before the stream about that Irish goalkeeper. Someone mentioned on Twitter as well that we're close to signing him, Josh Keeley from St. Pat's, 19-year-old keeper. Held in very high regard in Ireland, but probably not the news we wanted.
The next Hugo. Is he free as well, Matt?
I'm not sure. I would doubt it though. I doubt St. Pass would let his contract run down.
But practically free. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, he might have cost 50 quid. But for Irish football, that's a lot of money. That changes their season.
Like it's interesting that if we're looking at someone who can, let's say, because you look at what we got. We've got Lucas, who usually plays on the right side. If Kulusevski can't, you think Bergwijn would be the left side for Son. Like if Bergwijn is the one that goes, then okay, you're going to need someone who can cover that left side.
Perisic.
Well, yeah, I still think Perisic is going to be signed to be the wing back. I do believe that. I think that's where we're going. But you end up thinking, we saw what he did last year with Brian Hill, and he played him mostly on the right hand side. So maybe he's thinking that Perisic can be that Kulusevski person. I find it weird. I saw someone talk about trying to get Memphis Depay. Like if you do that, then maybe the odds of keeping Bergwijn have increased because he may not want to go. He likes, again, they play together for Holland. There are so many other options that I think are better. Like to me, if you let Lucas go and you bring Depay in, that's it, done. I'd be more than happy with having those 5 options. You'd have Bergwijn, Depay, and then our front 3. And those would be the 5. And most of those could play in all of those positions. Like if you ask Kulusevski to play the Kane role, I think he could do it. Absolutely. So I just feel that Richarlison, it's so much money for someone that isn't, like we're not all on the bandwagon. I mean, that's just it. Like there are players out there that I think we could all be like, yes, we definitely want them. Like we all were with Vlahovic 6 months ago. We all thought that was a great idea. We're not there with Richarlison. And so maybe Conte wants him, but I can understand why many people don't.
Well, talking of Vlahovic, you've apparently shown an interest in Lucas this week. Becky, club icon, Lucas, would you be sad to see the back of him?
Well, it's always a tricky one, isn't it? He's a legend, and he is a legend, and he will always be a legend, but that is not a reason to keep him. Having said that, I thought he had played one of his best games at the Norwich game on the last game of the season, that assist that he did for Sonny. But yeah, it's like we said, if somebody else comes in that's better, it is time for him to move on. There's conflicting reports about Moura because last week he was saying he'd spoken to the club and he was going to stay until the end of his contract and he was happy. And if you remember at the end of the Norwich game, he was the one that shouted to the camera, "We're back in the Champions League." So I think he would be happy to stay. He probably doesn't mind not getting many minutes because he doesn't get that many anyway. But if he's part of a deal for somebody else, then possibly.
That's one of the things that I think makes it unlikely for him to be part of that Everton deal because I don't know if he said it or if it's just been a lot of reliable reports, but I think it's almost common knowledge that he wants another year or two with Spurs and then go back to Sao Paulo to finish his career out there. And if he's going to be part of a deal to Everton, you have to question, would they sign him on a 1 or 2 year contract? I mean, is that a smart investment for them to make? I wouldn't say so.
Which is why Lampard's going to do it.
That's a fair point. That's a very fair point.
Control transfers. Does he have that autonomy at Everton? Let us know if you know the answer to that in the chat. Yeah. So
I mean, let's give Lampard some credit. Like he won a fair few games once he took over, because a lot of the teams down there, they did win a number of games towards the end of the season. So, if you're an Everton fan, I think they're all pretty happy that he's there. They all think they all think he's an improvement on Benitez. Weirdly, but it's like if he comes in for Winks and he comes in for Lucas, then Spurs are laughing because we want to find the next Hull where we can dump all our squad players. And if Everton are that, then brilliant.
I thought you were going to say so we can sign Robertson's, the next Robertson from Hull, but there you go. Apparently, Everton still owe us a ton of money for Delhi as well. Apparently, there was £5 million for avoiding relegation as part of the Delhi deal. Plus, if he plays another 9 games, there's 10 million on top. Plus, there's potential further add-ons, and there's even a 25% sell-on clause if that we can negotiate with. So it looks like we may do some business with Everton, but who knows? We'll keep an eye on it. A player we've not talked about much for good reason because there's not been much written about him. Reggie. So I've really liked Reggie from day one. But if you read the rumours throughout the season, it looked like Real Madrid might be coming back in for him. And then you look at the players that we've signed. Obviously, Perisic will probably be that left wing back with Sessegnon, the understudy. Where does Reggie fit into all of this, Matt? Are you hearing any rumours about him moving out?
I think this is just going to amplify the fact that I'm addicted to Twitter. But in the last couple of minutes, Paul O'Keefe has mentioned a potential Reguilon and Mckennie swap deal. I know Calcio Mercato mentioned earlier today that Juventus were in talks to sign Sergio Reguilon. Now, what I'm immediately thinking from this is I think Tottenham kind of half pulled out of a Kostic deal because he looked likely to go to Juventus. If we swap Reguilon and McKennie, that could then open up a path for us to maybe bring in Kostic as well. But I think it is inevitable that that Reguilon leaves this summer. I mean, we still owe Real Madrid £30 million this summer to from when we got him 2 years ago. And I think in hindsight, maybe Daniel Levy was expecting Reguilon to have a fantastic couple of years at Tottenham, so much so that Real Madrid want to bring him back. And then ultimately we don't pay anything. We just get 15 million off Real Madrid, which would have been fantastic, would have been a loan where you make a profit essentially. But it just hasn't worked out. And I think we all thought it would happen for him under Antonio Conte. You know, one of the best managers for attacking wingbacks, one of the wingbacks that was seen as one of the best potential-wise. It just hasn't quite clicked. And it could be the league, it could be the system, it could be that he just looked better than he was when he was playing with Sevilla. But I don't think there's any place for him in this team. And I'd have to disagree with HG that the more I see rumours go on, I don't think Perisic has been brought in as a left wing back. Look, I mean, of course, it's definitely an option, and he can play there. But in the last couple of days, we've been linked with Owen Wijndal from Alkmaar, we've been linked with Pervis Estupiñán from Villarreal, and there's some more left backs being mentioned. I don't see Sessegnon going anywhere, and to be honest, I'd be quite annoyed if he did. We don't need 3 left wing backs, so I think maybe Perisic has been brought in as a utility player, which is I think could still be a good option. He's still a good mentor for the younger players in that team, even Sessegnon as a left wing back. So I think there will be more movement there this summer, and it probably starts with Reguilon getting a move, whether it's to Barca or Juventus, just anywhere outside of England, I would say.
Please do hit the like button. There's 166 people watching and only 59 likes. So do smash that like button. Really helps us out. Takes you a second. Please, if you would be so good. HG, Reguilon, I feel a bit bad about this whole thing because when he came in, I really liked him, as I think a lot of people did. Thought he was a fantastic player. I even remember Jamie Redknapp going to war with Roy Keane about what a good player he was, and that he would be in Man City and Liverpool's squad. He's had a hell of a drop off this season, hasn't he? What do you put it down to?
I'm not being funny, but I would take Roy Keane's judgment over Jamie Redknapp's when it comes to football players.
I know.
The thing with Reguilon, right? When he played at Seville, they played probably a 4-3-3, 4-5-1, and he joined the attack. He wasn't the attack, right? He wasn't on the end of crosses. He wasn't, he scored a few goals, but nothing major. But he was part of what they did, not what they did. And I think that's the thing with Spurs. Under Mourinho, under Nuno, he was asked to be kind of more of an attacking threat. We didn't really play anyone in front of him. Some would always tuck inside. And as a wing back, it's the same idea. Like, unless he's scoring tap-ins, the crossing ability we saw in the first season seemed to disappear. So it just seems to be a bad fit now. Like, he's clearly not a bad player. And I think if Juventus are interested, then that would be great, because a swap with McKennie seems to suit both sides. Because I think it's clear that Spurs would like to have McKennie.
We've liked him for a long time.
He's been injured a lot as well, hasn't he? He seems to keep picking up like niggly things, and then it takes him a while to kind of get his groove back, and that's affected him as well.
Well, has he really been injured? Was he really injured at the end of the season? See, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that is questionable. It is kind of questionable, because it wasn't obvious like Doherty. Suddenly he was back, then he wasn't, then he was. I don't know. It's the famous hip irritation that Dyer had towards the end of Pochettino's stay, that we all thought, there's nothing wrong with him. It's a weird one. Like, because I feel like if we bought Perisic to be an attacking player rather than a wing back, then the guy Wijndal that Matt Hayes talked about, I'd be all on that. I really like Wijndal as a player. But again, it just seems to be, for someone like Conte, who everyone says is very short term, he wants people who he knows he can trust straight away. Well, Wijndal has only ever played in Holland. He's played a few games for the Dutch national side, but it seems like a very much a Levy move, where you try to get someone who's available for a cut price, release clause fee. I think he's good and worth it, But you do kind of get the impression that we're going to be going for players that have played in a top 5 league before, that have played Champions League before, or are on free transfers. And if you can combine all of those, then brilliant. So Wijndal, again, like I might want it to be true, but I struggle to believe it.
Yeah. Why? Because he's too good for us, do you think?
No. It's just for what Conte apparently wants to do, then I don't think Wijndal really fits those, the targets that he seems to go for. Spurs, last summer, Wijndal would have been a perfect choice.
Yeah.
But it's not very Conte. As much as I would like him to come, and I'd like him and Sessegnon to be those two, if Perisic plays further forward, then great. But it's a bit, I don't know, it just doesn't fit with where it looks like we want to be going. If we really want to challenge for the title, which it does appear as if that's what we want to do. We want to build a squad that can challenge this season and not necessarily build one that's going to be good in 2-3 seasons' time.
Yeah.
Then is Wijndal really that person? That would be a questionable decision for me.
Becky, final word on Reggie. Keep or sell?
I think he's gone. At the end of the Burnley game, when they did the walk round, he was down our corner and he kind of blew a kiss and sort of waved. And he just looked like he was on his way out or wanted his way out, or things just haven't worked for him. I agree with everything HG said. I really liked him last season, but it just proves that enthusiasm, Galini's proved this, enthusiasm is not enough under Conte. You've got to have something to back it up. And unfortunately, I think his time is up. Get money for him, though. While he's still wanted, let's get money for him. Let's not just let his contract dribble out.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. Totally. And absolument. There is a man who we have sold. The perpetual loanee, Cameron Carter-Vickers, is gone. 6 million quid. We understand the fees could be rising to 10 million. There you go, Mark. There's his shout out. What are we going to do without Cameron Carter-Vickers every season? Who's going to go on loan to random teams? HG. Good money. Good money. Tanganga could be the new CCV. Good money for him in the end, really, and loan fees along the way, rising to 10 million. It's a blinding bit of business, isn't it?
Hey, look, if Carter-Vickers can guarantee that Celtic make the Champions League each season, it is a win-win for both sides. 6 million for a Champions League team is more than affordable. He's 24, 25? So he's got his best years ahead of him. He's going to play every game for Celtic. I think Celtic's manager is pretty underrated. I think they'll do quite well. In Scotland, they always do well. But do you know what I mean? Like they're going to overperform. I think that. I do think that Celtic have a decent manager. So, yeah, 6 million for Spurs for a guy that's, played no more than 10 Carling Cup games. I mean, I don't know how many it is, but it can't be that many. It's very good money for Spurs.
Well, Matt, surprised that he signed somewhere permanently. I think that was the only shock, really.
Yeah, look, it's been in the works for a few months, Celtic trying to make it permanent, but I think if this was what Tottenham had planned all along, it's unbelievable business. But because it would be unbelievable business, I assume it's not what they'd planned all along. Looking at since 2017, he's been on loan. I won't take any Jack Clark slander. I swear to God, I'll leave the stream. Since 2017, he's been on loan at Sheffield United, Ipswich, Swansea, Stoke, Luton, Bournemouth, and Celtic. And if the plan all along was for him to have one good loan spell at a team that would then make it permanent, it's worked out very well. And 6 million rising to 10 for a player who's made one competitive appearance for Spurs in the last 5 years, which was the Europa League or Conference League defeat to Pashas de Ferreira last season. That's really good business. And look, the question remains, who we're going to play centre half in our midnight preseason games, but I'm sure we'll maybe it could be Tanganga, as HG said, but it's good business for Spurs, good business for Celtic, and a good move for Carter-Vickers, who has said very vocally how much he enjoyed his time at Celtic last year, and I hope he wins many trophies there, like every player who leaves Tottenham does.
Well, let's talk about some centre-back options, ins and outs, and we should probably have a little sportsman's bet, no money involved, but which centre-backs are going to leave us this season would be an interesting one to discuss. But also, let's talk a bit about the centre-backs we may be bringing in. So Bastoni, Matt, is it dead? A lot of people, I saw a couple of comments in the chat. If we could afford to monkey 60 million euros on Richarlison, why aren't we just offering that up for Bastoni?
The thing with Bastoni is it's not down to Inter wanting more money than we're willing to offer. I think on the personal term front as well, finances just aren't the issue. Oh yes, John, sorry, I forgot, of course. I'm here for 6 years. But finances aren't the issue there. It's Bastoni just being in love with the club that he grew up supporting, and the club that he's won the league with last year, came close again this year, won a few domestic cups, back in the Champions League, and it just seems like we're in a very similar position to where we were with Pau Torres last season. But it's not dead yet. And I think the initial comments from Bastoni's agent before the meeting with Inter, where he said, Bastoni's a professional, he loves Inter, but he's able to adapt. I think that kind of left the door open for something to happen. Then he comes out and says he's definitely staying. And look, let's be honest, any section of society other than football fans would say, okay, that means he's staying. But because we're perpetual optimists, we're going to say, yeah, maybe there's a chance. And he's going to put the onus back on Inter Milan if something does happen. But the fact still remains that Inter Milan desperately need money, and they need money before the end of this month. They're demanding €80 million from Milan Skriniar, which just isn't going to happen. I saw a list of players they're signing. They're trying to bring in Bremer from Torino. They're getting Raul Bellanova, Christian Aslani, Esteban Cambiaso, I think it is, Paulo Dybala. They want Romelu Lukaku. There's another midfielder in there as well. Where are they getting that money from? If those are all the players they're signing, and Skriniar at 80 million is the only outgoing, they're still going to need more money. So the hope is that they will be so stuck for cash that they will ultimately have to pick Bastoni up and put him on the plane in order to make the move happen. So it's not dead yet, but I think it's definitely time to give up hope. That's for sure.
I thought it was definitely over, and then when I was checking Twitter, I think when we checked into the hotel on Friday, and I saw your tweet saying, nope, it's not over, completely over, and I was like, okay, it's I did think that was it, and but then. Like you said, we are perpetual optimists, and until the players, it's like Richarlison wearing the basketball top. Until the player comes out and says no, because last week Bastoni was tweeting, wasn't it? He was going to London, and I know he was going for the Wembley game, but it's all part of their kind of brand, isn't it? And they're building their own brand and making sure that they're kind of kept in people's thoughts, whether it ultimately turns into nothing as well.
If you look at Inter. You look at the players that they're thinking that they could shift to raise this money. Bastoni is at the bottom of that list. They want to shift other players first. And I think Bastoni is going to be the most difficult to replace. As much as they may want Bremer, he's not a like-for-like replacement for Bastoni. He might be for Skriniar, but he's not for Bastoni. And so it does appear that, logically, they're looking around thinking, okay, well, look, if we sell Lautaro, but we can bring in Lukaku and Dybala, are we really down, right? To me, the answer is probably no. They'd be quite happy to make that swap. But Bastoni is much more difficult to find a replacement for. That I think that, our best hope of this is, as Matt said, if they really do need money by the end of the month, and we're the only ones that are offering the money that they need, then it may well have to happen. But I think it's a bit of a pipe dream. If he's not desperate to go, which he clearly isn't, we need to decide how long we want to wait, and we need to figure out who is the next one. I saw a comment, I think, from David. What point do we move on from Bastoni so we can get the next best choice? To me, relatively soon would be it. But it's a shame because Conte desperately wants him. I think that's clear. And
I think we might. Why. Is this just not those standard Paratici? We've probably got the other players lined up. So other names. Skriniar, is he an option? Pau Torres, is he an option? Botman, Bremer. There's other names in the frame, isn't there? There's a lot of centre backs from Europe looking like they might end up in the Premier League.
I think if I'm Spurs, I've probably got 5 names that I would be happy to buy. Because again, you never know that Spurs are going to be their top option. They probably won't be. For those players you've listed, there are other teams available that will want them. Like Botman's been linked with AC Milan for ages. Pau Torres strikes me as being someone who would rather play for Man United than for Spurs. Despite the fact they're not in the Champions League, I think there's that, it's Manchester United. And as much as Spurs are great and maybe better than Man United right now, we don't have that name that Man United do. So maybe we won't find the big, well-respected name in European football that perhaps we'd like to have. But we'd be crazy to not have 5 names lined up.
But we've already got one. we've already got a centre half that we're very happy with. So we got our great signing already.
It's true. I mean, like, but Ben Davies has been fantastic at left centre back. There's no doubt about it. That's who you mean, right, Becky? Who do you mean?
No. Well, yes, but no.
Yeah, but no.
Out of all these names, Matt, where do you think the truth lies? Who do you think we're really after? I mean, my personal take is that the love for Pau Torres has never really left Paratici, and he would like Pau Torres at Spurs.
Yeah, it's so hard to tell. As someone mentioned a while ago, I mean, we know too well how much Paratici likes. He'll negotiate for 10, 11 players before getting the one. It is very difficult to know for sure which it is, but the one that makes the most sense is Bastoni. I use the phrase that Conte molded him into the player that he is, which I think is fair because he hadn't played at Inter Milan before Conte had ever come in. The Pau Torres one, I think is definitely one that Paratici is interested in. Whether it's one that Conte wants is a different question, because we'd agreed a deal with Villarreal last year to sign Pau Torres, but he ultimately opted to stay for the Champions League. But the fact remains that we could wake up tomorrow morning and Tottenham could have announced a centre back that none of us know about, like we did with Brian Hill last season, or like Paratici did with Weston McKennie when he was back at Juventus. So it's difficult, but looking at the ones that do make the most sense, it is Bastoni first, and the other names, Sven Botman, Josko Vardiol, Nico Schlotterbeck, I think they're all ones that we probably know aren't going to happen, because I think Schlotterbeck was destined to go for Dortmund even when we were linked with him. Botman destined for Milan. Josko Vardiol just in his first season at RB Leipzig, he's got 4 years left in his contract, doing really well there. If we're going to sign him, it could take a world record fee for a defender. So maybe they were the smoke screens, and we were hoping to get Bastoni done, but just couldn't convince him. And maybe we are back at square one. Who knows?
I mean, and the thing with Pau Torres, I mean, like, I read a post on Twitter that kind of talked about how you've got these centre backs that are, some are more aggressive and some would like to, they like to watch the play develop in front of them, and that Torres is one of those. He's not a kind of attack dog like Moura is. Even Ben Davies likes to get in and make challenges before the ball even reaches the defender, the attacker. And so if Pau Torres isn't that type of defender, then like the point here that my only Tottenham makes sense. Like, he's not the type of defender that Conte would want. In it doesn't mean he's not a good defender. Doesn't mean that Paratici might want him. But what Paratici was buying for last summer is different than this summer. So I just feel that Pau Torres, even if I thought he was going to sign for Spurs, which I don't, I'm not sure he's the type of defender that Conte wants. I think he wants someone who is more like Vardiol, who is more interested in trying to win the ball early and make life difficult for your opponent, rather than just hold a line and be good when called upon.
Well, we shall see. Let's move up to midfield. Eriksen this week's giving a strong indication that he's not going to stay at Brentford, I believe, Matt. I'd love to see. I'm not going to lie. I'd love to see Eriksen in the side for the reasons I've said before. He's a person who can. He's got the keys to unlock defenses, particularly defenses that sit deep, which we just don't have that ability in the squad right now. And if we don't have it from Eriksen, if he wants to re-sign, then we need to find it from somewhere, because to win the Premier League, you need those players like that can find a De Bruyne pass. That are like Eriksen and can unlock these defenses. What's the latest you hear on Eriksen? And are there any alternatives that we're considering?
I think we're going to get an Eriksen decision very soon. It seems as though Tottenham are confident that they can get something done. Now, confidence within Tottenham, they ultimately don't know what's on Christian Eriksen's mind, and I think there's been a lot of reports to say Eriksen feels almost an obligation to Brentford because they gave him the chance to get back into professional football, and he returned that favour very well on the pitch. But I think ultimately he's going to make the decision to leave and to get to a bigger team. And look, if it's not Tottenham, there'll be other teams that will be happy to bring him back into Champions League football. And it seems as though Tottenham is the obvious option for him. But there's also the fact that he didn't really leave on the best terms. I mean, we all saw that clip in the documentary where Levy said to him, "We'll offer you whatever Inter are offering in terms of money," and he said, "I don't want it. I want to go." And I mean that's all fair. He gave us some good few years, down tools a bit at the end. But I'm the same as you, Caller. I just want to see it happen. I want to see him back in a Spurs jersey, even if it's just for the kind of romantic side of the game. On a footballing front, I'm not entirely sure it's the best option we can go for. I think we probably need a more balanced centre mid and one who can like a Rodrigo Bentancur who every now and then can pick out that pass, but also has that defensive acumen. Eriksen doesn't quite do that, and bringing him in, I think, not that this is a negative thing, but it could change the system that we play in certain games, because we're playing that 3-4-3 very rigidly. I think it was the Liverpool game, we mixed it up a little bit and played Dele Alli kind of pressing on Trent. But by bringing Eriksen in, we could then opt to play that system that Conte played at Inter Milan, whereas a 3-4-1-2, Eriksen kind of sitting in that 10 position and rotating between kind of more typical number 9s and wide forwards playing in the striker position, which I think we need to do against the Burnley style teams. I know Burnley are down, but teams who are going to park the bus against us, we don't have someone who can pick that lock and who can open them up. I was kind of hoping it would be Kulusevski. Hasn't really proved to be the case, but if we can get someone like Eriksen back in that position against those teams, if it is just one ball he picks out with 20 minutes to go, we win the game 1-0. That's all we want him for. Is it going to happen? I'm kind of leaning towards yes, but tomorrow I could wake up and be leaning towards no. I'm really split on this one, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Becky, tell me you don't want Eriksen.
I can't do that, I'm afraid. I think, he improves our squad. There's lots of people saying in the chat. He's got that experience. He's got Champions League experience. He wants to play in the Champions League. He's worked with Conte before. I've said before, things have changed. I know the board are still there and those people are still there, but a lot of things have changed. And I saw a lot on Twitter yesterday because it was the anniversary, wasn't it, yesterday, of his last year. And I was talking to someone on Twitter saying that, in my job, I do first aid training quite a lot. And every time we do anything that's defibrillated, it just comes back. And it's just, obviously, he's happy, he's healthy, and his family. And that's the most important thing. But if we kind of park that, I think he would contribute so much to us. Yes, he's not going to play every game, and yes, it does change our formation, and I agree with all of that as well. I just think, he deserves to be playing at the highest level again, which is why I don't think he's going to choose United. Interestingly, the rumoured fixtures are that we've got Brentford first game of the season. I don't know if anybody else has seen that. Which, as soon as I saw that, I thought,
leak is right, by the way. I'd be amazed if that's true.
No, but say it was. And obviously last year we played City, didn't we, first game of the season, and that was supposed to be the City with Kane in it kind of game. So it's all funny, isn't it, how things kind of work out. But it's him. He's got to want to come, and I completely understand that. And if he doesn't, I've said this before, he wants to have another season at Brentford, then that's fine too. But I would love to see him back.
We've got a lot of Aussies in the cheese room. And I've just seen they've won their game, I think, on penalties tonight. Who were they playing? Peru or someone?
Peru, yeah.
Peru. So there you go. Lots of happy Aussies celebrating.
Paddington Bear, you guys took one hell of a beating.
Very good. Eriksen, no thanks. It's fairly split. I think the majority of people want Eriksen. Final word from you on this then, HG. Eriksen coming back. Would you take him?
Yes. I mean, he's not going to start every game, which he would do at Brentford, right? I mean, we have to make sure that it's all about what Eriksen wants. If he wants to play every game, then he should stay at Brentford and just enjoy his football. Again, we talk about players that kind of kept their teams up. He kept Brentford up. They would have been relegated had he not gone there. So the idea that he owes them, well, I think he's already paid the debt, if I'm honest. Yeah. But from Spurs' point of view, if he wants to stay in London because he knows the city and he's settled here and he doesn't want to uproot anything, then Spurs are the option. He's not going to go to Chelsea because that would ruin whatever legacy he has at Spurs. He's not going to go to Arsenal for obvious reasons. So then it does kind of leave Spurs as the option. The question for me is, how long does he sign for? Because he's in a situation where if he picked a right club, he could sign a long-term deal and be there for the rest of his career and be happy. But I don't think he's going to want to do that, especially after what happened the last time he signed a deal with Spurs. So, I mean, I talked about it a little bit on my Facebook page today. It may well be a kind of, it was rumored that it's a 2-year deal plus an option of 1. I don't think Eriksen wants it to be longer than 2 years. I think that would be the maximum. The idea that he would be there with Conte, with Kane, and then if those two decide to extend their deals, then he might do as well. But right now, he might say, you know what, I just want a year at Spurs. I'll play a year at Spurs. I'll get the kind of experience that I want. I won't play every game, but I've got a World Cup to worry about where I will start every game. So I don't need that in my club career this season. And then next summer, he'll have a similar choice, but maybe he'll want to go try and play in Spain if he's allowed to there.
Yeah.
It just like I understand that there are risks of signing short-term deals because if he gets injured, then that's that. But I don't think Eriksen is interested in signing for anything longer than 2. And so to me, it's always going to be about what he wants. And I think Spurs are his best option. And maybe he doesn't necessarily like that, considering what happened before. But for what Eriksen wants, Spurs are really the best available thing. And I think it's going to happen.
I hope it happens. I really do. I mean, the thing is, I do think Eriksen, I see a lot of the comments about game time. I think he will get a lot of game time. You know, he can turn games. He's a great option to have. And more to the point, you know, if you're looking at breaking down a Burnley, which I know they're not in the league, minor point, but that kind of team where they stick 11 men behind the ball, he would absolutely start those games. And there's a lot of them in the Premier League where teams do literally stick 11 players behind the ball and try and beat us that way because they can't out-football us. We need those options. If not Eriksen, we've got to sign someone else who can create because, unfortunately, we don't have those game changers in the squad. We don't have them on the bench.
Yeah, we hope to play 50 games plus. Every season we should hope to do that. 38 in the league, plus your Champions League and your domestic cups and whatever. 50 games should be the minimum. Eriksen could start 20 happily. And you know, Matt talks about changing the formation a little bit to fit him. There are going to be occasions where we're going to want to do that. That maybe it might make more sense to play with the top 2 and have Eriksen just behind or have Eriksen floating. You won't need to really give him a position, just like he did for Spurs. You know, the amount of times that when it was Desk, right, and all of them would kind of move positions. So sometimes Dele was the front man and Kane was behind, and sometimes someone was on the right instead of the left, and sometimes Eriksen was on the right. The goals he crossed for Dele in that Chelsea game, like they were both from that right-hand side. And so Eriksen, he's smart enough to know that I'm going to go where the space is. It's such an intelligent footballer that I can understand people not wanting him because of what happened before. I don't agree with a lot of what people said about what happened before, but I get it. I just think it ticks every box for both sides. And even if it's just for 1 year, great. And if he stays because Conte stays, brilliant. But I think Eriksen, you know, he won't want to commit himself to anything long to Spurs because of what happened when he tried to leave before.
Quite possible. Let's look at some of the other midfielders we've been linked to, and we can rubbish them along the way. So John McGinn reports that Aston Villa would want £80 million for the man that they paid Hibs £1 million for. Becky, that's not going to happen, is it? I mean, he's got a tremendous arse, according to Brendan. But
I don't know a great deal about him. I must admit, I don't watch Villa that much, and Scotland even less than that. But it's just too expensive, you know. And James Ward-Prowse as well. You know, 75 million to take free kicks. Well, we've just said we could get Eriksen for that. So it's just too expensive.
Yeah, but do his corners beat the first man? Because that would be an upgrade on Eriksen. Matt, McGinn, surely this is just Villa saying they don't want to sell him.
Yeah, McGinn played for Scotland the other day when they conceded 3 goals to Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. Last year, our goal of the year was a Shane Duffy header against Bulgaria because it was the only goal we scored in the year. I don't want McGinn. Enough said.
What about Ward-Prowse for 75 million? How does that float your boat?
No, I'm a fan of Ward-Prowse. I think I saw quite a few tweets after the England game. Was it Italy played on Saturday? Which I think I haven't heard people talk about it. I'm glad I didn't watch. People are saying he's just a Harry Winks who can take free kicks. I think that's a little bit harsh. The biggest pull is the free kicks. He was the second highest free kick scorer in Premier League history. That is a very big plus, but I do think he has a little bit more to his game. He's probably more that balanced midfielder that I was talking about. Kind of has the ability to break play up and spray the ball forward. But for 75 million, no, Southampton can keep him. And look, it's probably fair because, you know, Villa wanting 80 million for McGinn Southampton wanting 75 million for Ward-Prowse. That's probably the exact same as us wanting 150 million for Kane last year, in that nobody would pay that, but he's ultimately worth that to us because he's so important to what we do. So I respect it from them. They're probably guaranteeing they're going to keep their best players, but at least it's letting us know very early on to move our attention elsewhere.
Yeah, and I don't think you can look at what Ward-Prowse did for England and say that's who he is, because England right now make everyone look bad. So he's being asked to do a certain job for England, and it's working, I guess. But it's not the Ward-Prowse you see for Southampton, and he is more than just free kicks. But like McGinn to me is the type of midfielder that Conte would have liked in a 3-5-2. I do think he likes that. He likes those midfielders that do a bit of everything. He'll have one that sits, and then the two that could be more box to box, and McGinn could do that. But as we've talked about, like these teams like Everton, like Villa, like Leicester, whoever it is that are kind of in that group hoping to join the Big Six, they're not going to sell what they think are their best players on the cheap. Of course, I mean, why would you? You wouldn't do that. Spurs never did when we were trying to join into the big group. So it's not likely. There are going to be other options who are cheaper, that play for worse teams in and outside the Premier League that could do something similar. But yeah, McGinn is a decent player to me, but it's just not going to happen.
Okay, well, a player that we've been bandied around, it was mentioned in Seb's very excellent transfer show. If you haven't already checked it out, check it out. It's on our YouTube channel and is live every Sunday, 8 p.m. Is Stuttgart's Austrian striker, Sasa Kalijic. Is that right?
Close enough, yeah.
Kalijic. Did I get that right, Matt? Kalijic. Kalijic.
No, I believe you, caller. I don't buy that from HG. No, I believe you.
Part of the fun of doing these transfer shows, I'm sure, for people tuning in, is watching me badly pronunciate lots of names.
Pronunciate? What is that for a word?
It is in my head after I've had 2 beers. Tell us all about him while I go and get a can of Coke from the fridge, please, HG.
Do you know what? He's the big guy with good feet. Kalijic has scored a fair few goals for Stuttgart. I think he was there for 4 seasons, and got injured for 1. But the 2 that he was fit for, he scored decent goals, and he's wanted by Bayern and other the big teams in German football. And I think that's where he'll go. He'll go to Dortmund to maybe be the Haaland replacement. He'll go to Bayern to maybe be the second behind Lewandowski for the next, whatever, how long Lewandowski's going to be there. I don't see him coming to Spurs. As decent as he might be, he scored a good goal for Austria last year in the Euros against Italy when he came on. He doesn't play that often for the Austrian national team. He didn't play any minutes when I saw them last week, and avoided the show by doing so. But he's a good player, but I don't see it coming to Spurs because I think he'll have other options, better options for him.
Do you see Lewandowski coming to Spurs?
No, I think Lewandowski wants Barcelona. I think he wants out Bayern, and I think he wants Barcelona. And Barcelona would be happy to do that, but he's got a year left, and Bayern just won't let him go. And he's also 34 now, Lewandowski. So I mean, it's a very short-term thing for Barcelona to do. And you think for Bayern, it'd be a great time to get him a year before his contract's done, so they get some money for him. But Bayern's issue is there's really no one to replace him. They won't find someone who will score the same goals that Lewandowski has done repeatedly for the last 6, 7, 8 years. That I think Bayern would be, that they'd rather take their chances and keep him because they know they won't get a better one this year. So go on. Sorry,
that for me is the only reason why Liverpool have just paid 80-90 million for Darwin Núñez, because there's so few strikers out there. You have the ultimate pinnacle, the Haalands, the Lewandowskis, the Harry Kanes, the Jack Clarks. Then you have this massive void of nothingness, and then you get down to, I don't want to say average because there's players better than that. Maybe kind of the Gabriel Jesus level where they're good, they'll do a job, but they won't get you 20 goals a season. And I think that's what hasn't played at the price of Darwin Núñez. Look, he's a good player, has good numbers, but I don't think it's a very wise move to get a 22-year-old from the Portuguese league and pay that sort of money as if it's a guarantee that he's going to give you as many goals as I suppose Bobby Firmino did a few years back. But yeah, I think Lewandowski has his heart set in Barcelona, and the only thing that Bayern maybe had as a backup plan was the inquiries they made for Kane last week, if that is true, but that's not going to happen from a Tottenham point of view, from a Kane point of view even. So I think there's going to be a bit of a toxic end to that relationship there, whether it's this year or next year.
I mean, I think, like, if I'm Bayern, then I would keep Lewandowski. I'd let him go on a free, say thanks for the 8 years and the ridiculous amount of trophies and everything else that he's won for them. And then, if I'm Bayern, I might be thinking, well, Kane is maybe next. Because if Kane only has a year left at Spurs, like, you do think that that's
contract coming.
Yeah, look, I agree that could be likely. But if I'm Bayern, I'm waiting. Like, there are only, as Matt said, there aren't many guaranteed goal scorers in European football right now. Certainly not to the level that we've got used to. We've got used to players scoring 35, 40 goals a season. It used to be that 20 was a good year. But with Messi and Ronaldo and Lewandowski and Kane and all the others that we've had in the last 4 or 5 years, Haaland and Mbappe will continue that. But as Matt says, after that, it's a bit of a drop. And it does feel it's going to be an arms race, and that you're going to need, let's say, a number of attacking options. You look at the big teams that are struggling to keep their strikers, because these strikers, they know that, hey, if I'm Gabriel Jesus, I could be at Man City for the next 5 years, win a whole bunch of trophies, but I'm not going to play every game. And I can look around and think, I could play every game, and I want to play now. I've got all the money in the world. I've won everything I could probably win, bar the Champions League in this case. I want to play. And so it feels that, with Spurs having Kane and Son, as much as they're, both late 20s, almost 30 in Son's case, we've got 2 of the top 10, top 15 strikers in world football.
Yeah.
We're in a very strong position, and our front 3 rivals anyone. It really does. So I just think that, teams like Liverpool, they know that Mane wants out. I've read a rumor that they might try and swap him with Bayern for Gnabry, because Gnabry wants out from Bayern. That would be a great deal for Liverpool, if I'm honest. I think that would work really well for them. But they've got Jota, they've got Luis Diaz. They've spent big money on those players in the last couple of seasons because they knew this time was coming. And it looks like Nunez is the best current option for them, and they've had to pay over the odds to get him. But they just couldn't run the risk of not having the central striker that could get them 20 goals a season. Because if they've got Salah on one side and Luis Diaz on the other, they don't need a heavy goal scorer like the Lewandowski or a Kane. They need just someone who fits what they do. So it is a weird time. Like, I feel like when I was growing up, strikers weren't 10 a penny, but there were a number of them, and it feels like there just aren't anymore.
Everyone had a main man, didn't they?
Yeah,
that's how it felt anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's because teams use wingers more, don't they? I also have this conversation about Son, and Salah. What position are they? So I think that is, like you said before, having players that can be both footed and be, utilised in different positions as well. That's, for me, is more than your kind of crouch. In those days, you always used to be a crouch, didn't there, or a Ferdinand, or somebody that would be on the end of those crosses. And now a lot of players it's not crosses, it's fast play, in behind.
No, I think you're on the money. I think back in the day, there were a lot of teams playing rigid 4-4-2, and you had two guys up top, Sutton and Shearer, less Ferdinand. You didn't see many world-class wingers. You see many more world-class wingers now than you did then, I feel. And
certainly goal-scoring wise, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So the game has absolutely massively changed. Troy Parrott's looking good. He scored again for the Republic of Ireland, a good goal to beat Scotland 3-0. That's always nice to see. What happens to Troy next season? Bring him back or send him back on loan? Matt, your view as the resident Irishman here. I know what these two's view are because we've talked about it before.
Just in case anyone didn't hear you there, I just want to remind people that the Republic of Ireland scored 3 goals in a competitive game of football on Saturday. I still can't believe it.
Caveat, you were playing Scotland.
Caveat, that's more than we probably scored in the last decade. So look, let us enjoy it. One of them is from outside. Genuinely, right? A bit of I cannot remember ever seeing Ireland score a goal from outside the box. That Michael Obafemi goal is quite possibly the first I've ever seen. We're awful at football. Look, Troy Parrott's good. He ended the season really well at MK Dons too. He bagged himself a good couple of goals. Look, he's playing with some really good players there as well. I think Scott Twine, another side note, incredible player. I think he's got a big future. But yeah, Troy Parrott, Alistair Gold said today that he'll probably be loaned out again for next season with the view to maybe becoming or maybe making his mark on the Tottenham team the season after. Now, what that means for whether Conte will be here the season after, I kind of don't want to think about that. But look, he has undeniable talent, and that's always been there. I think the question with Parrott has always been the attitude and the off the pitch stuff, the people he's been involved in, and the stuff that he's been prioritizing. Doesn't really seem to have been the football, but maybe the loan moves have grounded him, made him realize that just because he signed for Spurs at the age of about 14 doesn't mean that he has a proper career ahead of him. He still needs to work for it, and it looks like he's putting that work in. So hopefully next season, I think the goal should be to get him loaned to a championship team, make that step up from the League One last year, and if he can still bag himself a couple of goals, because it wasn't a record-breaking season in MK Dons. He only scored about 4 or 5 goals in the league. But that's better than it was the year before. So let's hope next season is better than this season, and hopefully then we can get him into Spurs. And if he gets a couple of years in that team or in that training ground with Harry Kane, that's a damn good mentor for him to have, and maybe he is going to have the future we expected after all.
Yeah, not bad that. Becky, loan him out, would you? Troy?
Yeah, I think so. We said, didn't we, that MK Dons didn't get promoted, did they? Is that right?
No, sadly.
They didn't, yeah.
So that would have been a nice step up for him to kind of go with the squad that he was with, but they didn't. So yeah, it'd be interesting. He's obviously happy. I think it's great to see him performing well for Ireland as well. Because obviously that's on a bigger stage. It's tricky because if he goes out on loan too much, unless we're hoping that Kane signs a new contract, but say he doesn't for whatever reason. I've heard a lot of people say, get him back, get the experience from Kane. Kane may not be here. It's like I said about Eriksen, it's about what he wants to do as well. And we keep hearing about how he wants to do the right thing and he wants to show he's the right player. And Conte hasn't seen him, has he, either? So when he comes back, is there an opportunity for Conte to decide whether he wants him? He's not known, is he, for kind of the young players? And there's that side of it as well. So possibly, going out for a loan, and then when Conte's moved on, then he can come back and go from there.
He's still only 20. He's so young. Like I saw a list of the championship teams that might be interested in him, that apparently have shown interest in him. QPR stood out to me. They've got the new manager, the guy that was the so-called brains behind Steven Gerrard's rise at Rangers, went to him at Villa. A young manager that will hopefully know what to do with him. I think that could be a good move for him. But yeah, like if I'm Troy Parrott, I'm thinking, look, I need regular football. I need to prove myself at whatever level I'm at before I can dream of really being the Spurs thing. Like Conte may well look at him and think, "Wow, you are much better than I thought." But again, if I'm Parrott, I'm going to want to go out and play every game. I think that's better for him. So it's about just finding the right team to do it. We managed to do that last year with MK Dons. It clearly worked for everyone. If we can pick wisely again, that's the best for Spurs. I think short term and long term. We have to find somewhere where he'll play, and I just don't like. If he was at Spurs, he's likely to be third choice. It would be Kane, and then someone, and then maybe Son ahead of him. Like he's just not going to play. So to me, Parrott to QPR, year in the Championship, see what happens. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Just on the point there of teams that have been mentioned, Swansea were mentioned earlier today by some Welsh outlet, because they have Michael Obafemi at the moment. Whether he's going to be there next year, I think, is still up in the air. They got Cyrus Christie as well. So Parrott goes to Swansea, plays with some players that they already has a good link with. I mean, that header it was Michael Obafemi with the assist. Yeah. That could be very good for his development as well. And Swansea are quite a decent side, to be fair.
I'd be very interested to hear people's knowledge on this, because I don't know much about this next subject at all. But apparently Rangers head scout Andy Scolding is going to join the club today. David Ornstein tweeted. Matt, can you tell us anything about this one?
From what I've read, he seems to be a man who's coming in to plug a gap in Parati's knowledge, which is the knowledge of the English market. Parati is the Serie A expert, the Italian expert. He'll pick up fantastic deals from there, even from some European leagues, as he's proven in the past. But unsurprisingly, doesn't really have the best knowledge of the English league. And apparently, Andy Scolding is seen as an expert in that field. I don't know much more than that about it. Some suggested that he's not actually going to be involved in the recruitment side of things, but kind of question what's the point in bringing in an expert in that field if you're not going to let him have some part of recruitment. But look, it seems to be the start of something being built. I don't know if you saw as well today, but with the Everton guy coming in and some former Anderlecht, there's a lot of backroom staff, a lot of changes going on the board, and it's just Parrott starting to put his shape on things, which can only be a positive.
Yeah, Greta Steinson. I mean, Everton, HG, should be slightly worried about their recruitment policies.
Yes. I don't know how much involvement he had.
Hitching going the other way as part of the deal? No, not really.
If you look at the signings that Everton have made in the last, 3-4 years, there aren't too many that stand out as being good.
Richarlison.
Yeah, see what I mean? There aren't too many that stand out as being good. I just, like you know what it feels like? It feels like that Paratici has realised it's like playing Football Manager, and he's looked and thought, wait, I'm allowed 8 scouts, and I've only got 3. I'm just going to trawl and see like who's got the best reputation, who's available, who's not going to cost me much, and I'm just going to fill them all in. And it feels as if, like, if Steinson's got a good reputation, brilliant. Regardless of what happened at Everton, if it's a decent reputation, fair enough. The guy from Rangers, I think it's clear that Rangers improved massively. They got promoted with Gerrard, but a lot of the players that Rangers found, like the guy from Charlton, was it Aribo, who's been there and been a mainstay. They got the striker, Morelos, that came from who knows where and has been a main guy for them. So I think Rangers probably have shown a bit more that they've found players that maybe other teams didn't want and have made them into being very good players. Rangers got to the Europa League final. I mean, that is a massive achievement. But it does feel like, what are these people going to do? And at some point, if they're that well respected and they're working at Spurs, but they're not the main guy, they may well want to go at some point. They'll do 2 years at Spurs and then be the main guy somewhere else. Maybe we're thinking of some kind of succession plan. I don't know. But it does feel like Paratici suddenly realised he's got all this money available to help him out, and he's going to get the best people to do it, which is not a bad plan. It really isn't.
It's an interesting plan. I just hope we don't start signing questionable Everton rejects, to be honest.
Dele Alli.
Absolutely. Let's talk briefly about another potential out. I mean, this is a weird rumour, Matt. I'm hoping you can shed some light on this. There appears to be a couple of suitors for Ndombele. Tell us more.
Oh, I haven't seen anything particularly reliable about this. What teams? I know Sevilla were mentioned at one point.
I've got Lazio and Roma on my run sheet from John. So, I mean, Roma, I think the link is because Jose had him running around Barnet Common. People are putting 2 and 2 together and thinking maybe he'd like to run around the Colosseum with him or something. I don't know. And Ndombele. Yeah,
look, it won't surprise me if someone will take him, because again, the one thing you can always say about Ndombele is that there is an immense amount of talent there, and I don't think anyone can really question that. It's just the attitude and trying to get that actually consistently on the football pitch. I think the Lazio one could be someone just trying to start up rumours of a swap deal with Milinkovic-Savic, because we're apparently interested in him. I actually haven't seen anyone report that. It's just Spurs fans, but I think somewhere like Italy or France is where Ndombele will end up. It's just how much money we can really get back in for him. And to be honest, we get 20-25 million. That may be a bit negative, but I'd be happy enough with that, because otherwise, I mean, he's burning a hole in the wage bill.
The wages are the issue, really, aren't they? I mean, if he's on 200k a week, then even if we get 100,000 a week off the wage bill and we have to subsidise or pay off the rest of it, it's just like one of those bad things you just got to take a hit on, unfortunately. But we've really got to try and get him out permanently.
We often talked about Dele going to PSG because Pochettino was there.
There is that.
Like going to Roma. I mean, he played a load of games for Jose. Was it last season? I mean, it just feels so like. Do you know what I mean? Like it really was only 18 months ago that he was playing regularly for Spurs.
Scored a ridiculous goal away at Newcastle, if I remember rightly.
Oh, and the City goal, wasn't it? The City goal. That goal was a season of lockdown, wasn't it? So didn't he saw that before it all went down for lockdown? That's how mad.
That Newcastle was actually the season just gone. It's mad when you think about it. But like it does make some kind of sense that the only manager really at Spurs who had much success with him was Jose, because he did play him. The first half season he didn't, and was on his back. But for that season when we made the Carling Cup final, I always call it that. I know it's not called that anymore. That he started a load of games. I think 28 games he started, and Mourinho was only in charge for 31. So it does feel like a decent. Like if I'm going to make up a rumor, then a rumor to Roma actually makes sense in this case, because Jose and Ndombele, there has been something in the past at least.
There was a flame there, wasn't there? It broke lockdown for Ndombele. I mean, that is a bond that surely that's going to weld them together for eternity.
I can only imagine that Jose went to Ndombele and started telling him what it was like at school, and he knows exactly what it's like to be someone as talented as Ndombele. Because it is crazy. Like I can't think of any player that when you watch play football is such a unicorn, can do things that very few players can, and yet has zero desire to really do that. Like everyone else has to be working for him to do his thing. And in the way that football is now, it's just not going to happen. 20, 30 years ago, Ndombele would be playing every game for someone. But it's the wrong era for him. A player like that.
Imagine what it'd be like if he had a work ethic.
Yeah.
Imagine how good it'd be.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Becky, glad to see the back of him when we do eventually.
Yeah, when that will be, though. Haven't we said there's like 4 years left on his contract or something like that?
I think it's 3 now, actually.
Is it?
Only 3 years of £200,000 a week to suck up.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the memories that we've got of him are of amazing goals. Someone's put about the Sheffield United goal in the chat, and all the goals we remember were stunning, and he played against Liverpool in the home game. Him and Dele played really well. It's just there's too much where he didn't do anything, and those of us that were at the Morecambe game remember, the 2 hours it took for him to trudge off, and those things, and he had Aurier there, didn't he? And he had Sissoko, and they had he's not even got those players to come back to now. So whether he is going to be training by himself or what, but yeah, I think we continue to move him on like we did with Bale. If we do some deal on his wages and some sort of loan deal, or we do manage to find somebody that will take him on, I just don't know. He's just far too expensive, and unfortunately, we've said many a time it hasn't worked, and we just have to cut our losses if that's what we have to do.
Those losses being about £30 million if we pay up the remainder of his contract.
I don't see us doing that. I think we'll try to loan wherever we can, and get as much as we can. Like I'm still hoping that Newcastle, because because
they've got lots of money doesn't mean
money.
I know, but their midfield right now is Bruno Guimaraes and a couple of cloggers.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's being slightly rude to those cloggers, but still, they are going to be looking for players, and if it's a low risk loan for Newcastle, why not? Right. I mean, they don't have too much to lose, let's say, but. Yeah, I am hoping.
Can you imagine if he went there? Do you remember the hat thing that he always used to wear in training, even when it was like a really hot day, and he always had that thing on up there?
Do you think he could wear it during games?
That's what I was thinking about. I was like,
well, get it read into his contract. Talking of duffers, Giovanni Lo Celso, Matt, still nothing on that one.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one because it seems a deal that every party wants to get done. That being Villarreal, Lo Celso, and Tottenham. I know Romano said today that Pau Torres isn't a priority for Tottenham right now. So I wonder, are Tottenham just kind of biding their time on that one to wait and see if we really need Pau Torres and then try to get a swap deal done. That Pervis Estupiñán, like I mentioned a while ago, the left back that we've been linked to as well. And by the way, while we've been live, we've been linked to another left back, Destiny Udogie from Udinese. But yeah, I think it is only a matter of time before.
So we definitely, Perisic has definitely been signed to play all over the place.
It would seem that way, but Conte is just so unpredictable. You don't know. Like we could do like a 5-4-1 next season with 2 left backs. I mean, he's that unpredictable. But yeah, Lo Celso, it's inevitable. He's going to go, and it seems to be about 18 million euro. Whether that's going to be a straight up fee or a price knocked off something for Pau Torres, But it's definitely interesting that it hasn't happened yet, because there were reports, I think even 2 weeks ago, I think with Xavi Jorquera said that it's done and we're just kind of waiting for the formalities to go over the line. But we will see the back of Lo Celso. And look, from loaning Ndombele and Lo Celso out in January, for one of them to have a good spell and to be able to recoup a bit of a fee, successful business. Didn't cost us in terms of squad depth, which for a bit it felt like it might have. Good business by Spurs, and we get to lose a player that was hated by everyone in the dressing room, apparently.
Well, and also,
Really?
like you said, changes our dressing room, I think, doesn't it? Changes that kind of attitude, and that's why I think people are worried about Ndombele coming back.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what it was about
away
Lo Celso that made everyone hate him. I would love to know, like,
No,
what kind of person he is. You know, is he more like me or is he more like Cooler? Like, what is it that made Lo
More like
Celso
you,
so
definitely.
hated? What, intelligent? Oh, okay, yeah, I'll take that.
And humble.
And humble, very humble. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, she.
No, I don't take that as an insult. It's fine. I think I'm intelligent. That's okay to say, surely.
He loved it. He loved
I think
it.
you were too.
That's fine. I absolutely think that people who think they're intelligent always are. Bale and Rodon. So that's got in the run sheet, Becky. You want to say something about this?
Yeah, I added that in just because we've been talking about whether Bale's coming back, and he said that he had loads of offers when he had that interview, didn't he? And then this week he's come out and he sort of said, well, Rodon should be playing more. He's shown what he can do at Spurs and he should be playing. And it didn't sound particularly positive what he was saying about Spurs. So I read into that is that Bale isn't coming back and he's trying to kind of, sort things out for Rodon.
Hopefully Davo's in the chat listening to this.
Because Rodon's played a lot of the games, hasn't he, in the Nations League? I think he's played them all. I know they've had a friendly and they had the World Cup game and everything, but Rodon's played a lot. Him and Davis have played. Bale's been sort of subbed in and out. And then he came out and sort of said, he should be playing. And I just thought, things sound like they've turned a bit more sour.
There he is. That was predictable, wasn't it? I'm going to ask about this one. Dodo at right wing back. I don't know a lot about this guy. HG, you're the font of all wisdom, as you've already told us. Dodo.
Hey, look, I don't know everything, but there are things I know a lot about. I'll put it like that.
Please tell me you know something about Dodo.
Yeah, look, I know he plays right wing back or right back for Shakhtar Donetsk. I can imagine he doesn't want to stay in the Ukraine. If they even have a football season, which there's a chance they may not. So yeah, like I've seen him play a couple of times. He looks pretty good, but it's just a question of, how much does Conte really know about him? How much does Paratici really know about him? I do think it's people looking around Europe and saying, hey, look, like right wing backs who might be available, because everyone knows we're looking. Like, give it a couple of weeks, we'll be linked with the Adama Traore again. That's just how things are going to be. But like Dodo, or however you would say his name, would be someone that I could see Spurs being linked with. Like I mentioned earlier, all these kind of, if we got Isak because he's Swedish and plays with Kulusevski, or if we got Molina because he's Argentinian and plays with Romero, like there's something to that. Eriksen and Højbjerg. Like I do think there is something that could work there. It would make sense. Mæhle would be another one if you're looking for Danish players that they have an understanding with each other already. Why not look at things in that way? Because if you're going to try, and again, if you want to get a squad of players that will hit the ground running so you can really attack the title, which seems outrageous, but that's what Conte wants to do. We all know that. So I saw a video today on Tifo that was very much like, what Spurs need to do to close the gap. And I'm thinking, this is just a recipe for trolls, but they went in for it for like 10 minutes about how Spurs, what they could do to really close the gap on those teams above them. And it said that we were, 20 odd points behind Man City and Liverpool. And I remember thinking, that's not that many. I was expecting to be like 30, 40, because that's probably what we were, 2 seasons ago. But it's a weird one to know that we have a manager.
A surprising amount of points. I was looking at the league table with someone at work. The gap between us and Man United, say, was like over 10 points. Massive. And
Man United had 6 points off us. That's the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But
my favorite number about that is we got 71 points this season. We got 71 points. Last season, Liverpool got 69.
Yeah.
So like it's that quick how things can change around. I know injuries played a big part in that, but what I'm saying is we're winning the league.
Well, look, anything's possible, isn't it? Anything's
is.
possible. Do you know anything about Dodo, Matt?
The only thing I know is that there's a very funny thing I saw on Twitter that said this is a rumor that I can't see taking off. I was a fan of that.
Brilliant. Oh dear. Well, look, I want to thank you all for joining me. We've been going for an hour and a half, so please do hit the like button, do subscribe while you're here. Matt, tell everyone where we can find you, as if they don't know already.
Thank you, caller. My YouTube channel is Mate's Tottenham Blog, or on Twitter, Mate's THFC, just below me. I just talk about transfers because I absolutely love them. Sometimes they're more exciting than watching Spurs on the pitch, but hopefully that'll be changed by making good signings this summer, and then we're good next season. So yeah, it's just transfer shows like this the whole way out through the window.
Becky, thanks for joining us once more. Always a pleasure.
All right. Thanks for having me, and I'm back on Wednesday trying to talk more about transfers. Yay!
Absolutely. Anchoring the show. Well done on that, and I look forward to tuning in. HG, once again, what can I say? Thank you for joining me. I'm going to be nice. I had lots of gags and insults lined up, but I just thought it's going to be nice.
I get the impression you don't really mean that, but like as we saw on Twitter before the show started, people like shows that have you and I on it. Because we do have enough history to make it interesting. But yeah, like I liked being on the show. I'm sad that I won't be on for a little bit because my mum's coming, and no one wants to see my mum on the show again. So it's
if we get short, can she make up the numbers?
Absolutely. She'd do more than that. She'd do. She knows her
she holds her own. I know she holds her own. Actually, it's a family trait. Right, let's wrap it up there. Till next time, come on Spurs, do some business in the transfer market. We need stuff to talk about. Come on, you Spurs.
Amen to that. Come on, you Spurs.